And we're live, so welcome along everyone to this week's live stream. I'm Dan Fowley, and with me as always is Peter Chalmers. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning.
And this week we have a special guest with us, Sam Smeaton from nVision Talent. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to give our audience a little bit of an intro, Sam, of who you are, what you do, and what your background in the Salesforce ecosystem is?
Sure. So my name's Sam Smeaton. I run a company called nVision Talent. We're a recruitment agency focused on new and emerging technology sectors, and primarily that encompasses Salesforce and cloud-related technology. We have been in the ecosystem since late 2010, and work with a variety of customers, partners, ISVs, and so forth.
Excellent. And so over that time, what kind of clients have you worked with? A lot of consultancies, end users. Has that changed over time?
Initially, there was a big focus on consultancy, and I think naturally a lot of the projects that were happening and from the end clients were kind of all being done by consultancy, especially in those early days when I first started. So a lot of the requirements that we had early on were on the consulting side. I think that has slightly changed over the years, and although consultancy is still a really big part, there's also an emphasis on customers, leveraging sort of independent contractors or freelancers, depending on the scope of work. And so that's another side of the business that we do, is more on that kind of independent contracting side, short to medium term engagements, as well as the longer term kind of permanent hires that we do as well. So I think it has slightly shifted, but I think overall the balance is still pretty even between consultancy and end user as well.
What are you seeing in the current market, Sam? I mean, given we're in the middle of the COVID situation, has it changed much?
Yes, definitely it has. It's obviously a very unfortunate situation pretty much for everyone, and there's you only have to look at the unemployment rates to see what's happening in the economy, and Salesforce and IT is not necessarily immune to that. So there are more candidates available at the moment. There's more candidates, out of work, or, I've spoken with a few recently that actually had offers that unfortunately they had to retract due to the current situation. And so I'm finding now that whereas, pretty much my whole career has really been a candidate-driven market, and there's always been a shortage of talent. And I don't think that has necessarily changed. I still believe that there is a fundamental talent shortage, and especially in the Salesforce ecosystem. However, in the short term, I think we're going to see more candidates available. Also, I'm finding that companies are really looking at their models, and some are sort of switching to more of a contracting style labor force to try and mitigate some of the risk, I guess, of hiring permanent staff at this time. Who knows, I guess, how long that will last for. It's kind of uncharted waters at this point. But yeah, I think overall, people are generally just happy to be in a job, first and foremost. And so it is interesting times. I know I've been busy trying to spend a lot of time and offer my help and guidance where I can. And from our point of view, we're certainly less busy on the hiring front, but at the same time, there's other initiatives that we've been working on, and working closely with candidates to try and, I guess, guide them and try and offer any sort of support we can is important at this time.
Are there any advice you would have, Sam, for anyone in the ecosystem who kind of finds themselves between jobs as a result of what's happening at the moment?
Look, I think certainly staying up to date with your certifications and your Trailhead badges and just your self-education is super important. I think we all have a chance or an opportunity at the moment when things are a little bit quieter, for most of us to really focus on those things that we otherwise don't get the time. And over the years, the amount of time that I've spoken with candidates that don't have certifications, and sometimes justifiably so, they just haven't had the time. They've never been in between jobs. They've always had full-time jobs, and they just haven't had the time to really sit down and study and do that. And I think now is that perfect time to do that. You're also demonstrating to potential employers that you are using your time wisely. You are serious about upskilling and further developing your knowledge. So I think that's one thing that people can definitely do, and looking at other relevant courses or tertiary education is good. But just staying in contact with people, staying in contact with your network. If a few recruiters in the ecosystem that you trust, stay up to date, have conversations with them, find out what's going on in the market, and really just get a bit of a sense check. I don't think now is the time to just completely, recluse and not do anything. I think you've still got to be having conversations. You've still got to be on LinkedIn, connecting with people, having conversations, and I think that's really the best thing that that people can do at these times.
One of the things that Dan and I have talked about before also is that community element of Salesforce. I think there's a part of that you can tap into. There's regular user group meetings now being held online, and you're not restricted right now to the one that's in your local city. So you've got the ability to for us to jump into ones over in New Zealand, or for New Zealand to jump into the ones here as well. I think it's, to your point, the more that you're talking to people, and the more opportunities are out there because of that. So, but also it's just increasing your footprint across all of that as well. I felt like Donald Trump there for some reason. I apologize for that.
Wow.
Classic.
I think.
Sorry,
I think
say
you're right.
Oh, you go, Sam.
Go on, Dan.
The joys of
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, you're right. When it comes to the community groups and a lot of the events, I guess, that we've seen reimagined and in an online format, there's really no excuse now. It's easier in the past when, again, people were busy and, there's various user groups or community groups or online formats where you have to physically go somewhere. It was quite easy not to do that for whatever reason. And now it's, you open up the laptop, you can attend these things and you can really get a lot of value out of it. So I know from my point of view, I'm a member at a couple of networking clubs and they do have a physical clubhouse, and I was horrendous at actually ever going to that place, even though it was literally 5 minutes away from where I am. But because I'm in the office or I'm running around or I'm doing things, with the whole thing is online now. So I'm finding myself really getting a lot of value, actually a lot more value out of that at the moment. So you're right. I think, staying on top of that, signing up to the various groups and having conversations with like-minded people and people who are in the same position or a similar position is really important, and having that support network, during these times.
Yeah, I think that's key. So I was just going to give an example that yesterday evening I attended the Auckland user group meeting, even though I'm not currently in Auckland. And often I would go along because I travelled a lot and I would be in town and I would try and time a trip around a physical meeting. But yesterday I actually went for a walk around the block and I was just listening in and watching in on my phone and got to take part. And it was just on a Google Meet. And so everyone actually had an interactive part that they would, the leader would take people off mute and allow them to contribute beyond just who was presenting for the session. And so it was, it had a good community feel to it. Nothing was really lost, which was great. And a lot of these are being recorded as well. So if it doesn't fit time-wise, you can often, a lot of these events, you can find the recordings later and still get the benefit of any knowledge that was shared during the meeting.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Great thing. Sam, what have you seen that is the balance between a consultancy role? We've actually talked about that one already, haven't we? Let's talk about how you see things in the market over the next few months. You know, what are you hoping? Or what do you think is going to happen?
Good question.
Have you got your crystal ball?
Yeah, well, we will hold you to it, of course.
Yeah. I wish I was a fortune teller. I think, look, again, it's none of us have really been in a situation like this, and it's completely different from the financial crisis, right? Where we had in 08 and 09. I think businesses are fundamentally sound and they're fundamentally doing well. It's the flow and effect of obviously all the sort of lockdowns and regulations that we're all kind of living through. So I guess from that point of view, it's who knows how long this thing will take to bounce back. But I would hope and I would think that it wouldn't be too long, given the situation, that businesses are fundamentally sound and actually doing well, especially in Australia and New Zealand. We have really strong economies at the moment. I think over the next few months, as we get through the COVID and restrictions get lifted and eased, I think there'll be a really, really big bounce back, or my hope and my thoughts are that there will be a really big bounce back. I think one thing that will come out of this is I think employers will be a lot more open and receptive to remote working. Mm-hmm. And I think overall we do okay with that in Australia and in Australia and New Zealand in general. But I think compared to somewhere like the US, where it really has been a norm for a number of years, I think we'll see a bit of a shift from that point of view. Whereas once upon a time, people needed or wanted staff in a particular location, on site or in the office every single day. I think that will change a little bit. And I think there'll be a lot more flexibility where people are based and how they get work done. Especially as employers are realizing that people can actually work, they can work remotely, or they can work from home, at least most people. But I personally like a bit of a balance. I like a split between the social aspect, having that collaboration, having physical people in the office. But then I like to be able to, if I need to get stuff done from home, I find there's less distractions and that type of thing. So I think coming out of it, that will be a positive. I really think people are eager. The people I'm speaking to are really eager to get back to some sort of normality and get back to the office and get back to their teams. So I really think there's going to be a huge bounce back again once restrictions are eased and once we're back to some sort of normality. But again, it is kind of uncharted. So who really knows? I'd be keen to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I definitely think that whole remote work piece will definitely play out. The main thing I think about then becomes you need, particularly when bringing on new staff, will be a really great onboarding experience. The reason I think a lot of what's happening at the moment is working is that we'd built up these relationships in a physical sense prior to this enforced pandemic. So in the future, if we're going to bring on remote workers, then how do you build up those relationships? And we had a new staff member start second week of the pandemic, I think, and so we put a lot of extra effort into onboarding. And I think pretty much everyone, and he's been a great sport, everyone in the office that he's based has had a virtual coffee and just got to know everyone at that level and regular check-ins to see how they're going and that kind of thing. Because then, from a candidate point of view, it opens up a much bigger market. If you're not constrained by distance, and even in large cities, Sydney, Auckland, we've had candidates who live in the same city, but they're an hour's drive down the freeway, and so any conversation, well, how many days do I need to be in the office because I have these constraints? And can't find that balance. So hopefully this becomes that next evolution of working from home policies that work for everyone. And the one, I think people will rethink that. I've certainly found that I've got a reasonable work from home setup for occasional work from home days. If this was to be the next 2 years, I would probably rethink my setup and do things a bit differently, and that'll change how people look at their home life and their setup, so they can still have that degree of separation. I know a lot of people are struggling with kids at home and that kind of thing. So it'll open new doors. And I think the thing I'm looking forward to actually is that we've only, say one example, Zoom's taken off. They're doing really well, but they've only scratched the surface of what's possible in an online setting. So, okay, great. We've got really high quality video, high quality audio. Zoom has breakout rooms. That's fantastic. But then you go to that next level of, okay, we've got this task to do, a brainstorming session, and we solve a lot of that right now with screen sharing of various tools. But I think these communication platforms are going to end up building a whole lot of features into their products to solve for specific use cases of, okay, what's this meeting about? What are we trying to get done? And it'll be built into Zoom or Google Meet or whatever to actually make these meetings more productive by way of the technology and different. There's one technology I'm tracking, which is like a virtual world type setup. So you can kind of have this virtual office and see, well, who's in the kitchen, who's in, and basically as soon as you virtually enter that room, you get the audio and the image of whoever else is there, and you can have a casual interaction and then kind of leave again. So that side of things will be really interesting over the next months and years. But it should accelerate that a lot faster than the rate that was going to be developed.
I think we're lucky that we're used to this stuff. We've the three of us have all been in the cloud space in particular for a long time, and we're set up to deal with that. But it's interesting that some companies and organizations aren't, and even some of those that you think are using the latest and best technology. That transition to working from home has actually been quite difficult. So, I mean, that's just from the technology perspective. Then you've got the people perspective on top of that. I would hope that we'll see more of this as we go forward. We'll see the reduction on the need to be in front of someone or be in an office, and that time that you are is actually more valuable because you're actually having that connection with someone. I mean, that's the one thing I'm missing at the moment. Is getting together and again, we're very good at bouncing things off each other over Zoom or Google Meet or whatever it is, but it's just being able to turn around to in my case John, who's senior lead engineer, and say, we've got this, what do you think of this, and just nutting things through. It's those tools are definitely missing in that regard, I think. So
might jump into a live question we've just had come in. So Michael asks, you've mentioned badges and Trailhead. I've chatted to various people in the Salesforce network, and they seem to think these do not really count until you have a certification. Any comments?
Depends what. I guess it depends how you're scoring it. I think from a practical point of view, I think if you're new to the ecosystem, you need to start somewhere, right? And you need to really learn the fundamentals. You need to learn the fundamentals of the platform, right? You're not going to go straight from knowing nothing about Salesforce straight into a Salesforce administrator role, it's not going to happen. You need some level of theory and some level of practical experience. So I would think that Trailhead is certainly a good option for most people to start and at least learn some of the fundamentals and some of the basics. I think there's a lot of non-for-profits out there as well who really welcome people volunteering their time and their experience. I think that's another really good option for people if they do have that time and if they are really serious and keen to get into this ecosystem. Actually approaching some NFPs and offering your time and seeing if you can, I guess help them out with their org. And a lot of them are really open to that. So I think that is one way, and that's more on a practical experience level. But I would think that Trailhead and certifications, they certainly are important, at least in my experience. Employers are really looking at that. And again, going back to that initial entry to the market, you've got to start somewhere. So I would think that that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I think partly it depends on which trails you're doing. So if someone came to me and said that they've got the Apex super badges, then those are quite challenging and tough, and take a number of hours to complete. So much so that the way they actually administer the practical component of the Platform Developer 2 exam is actually by completing these super badges, whereas it used to be a code assignment that you did separately. So, looking at which exact trails they've completed, I think speaks to some experience. And I think there's a certain point as well as from the point of view of the candidate, if they've completed these trails, they'll probably find the associated exam quite easy, because it is a really good, it's building you up to sit that exam. So as long as you're aligned between the trails you're doing and the exams you want to sit, it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Often the thing that stops people might just be the cost of the exams, but I think at the moment there's various discounts out there for certification exams during this time as well.
I think it's sort of same but different. I think Trailhead versus certifications, you get two different things out of both. Certifications are good, that they can show that the stuff to do inside Salesforce. Whereas I think Trailhead gives you more of the context about why and how you should do that. I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, there's 5 different ways you can do things inside Salesforce for a particular thing, and 5 of those, and each one of them could be relevant depending on what the situation is. So it's having that contextual stuff around doing that. I think Trailhead gives you more of that than what a certification does. At the end of the day, the cert is more of the lower ones in particular. It's the multiple choice. What's the right or the almost right or the most right answer to the question. But when you're more hands-on and you've got your own dev org and you're building things out in there and all that type of stuff, at least that's the way I learn. That works better for me than what a cert does. So, I think if we were talking to someone that we were looking at bringing on board, I wouldn't put any less value on someone having 50 badges on Trailhead versus not having a cert, or the other way. So it's more about whether you can demonstrate that you know the stuff more than having the piece of paper.
Yeah. How do you apply it? And that's there's the academic nature of it, of absorbing all this information, but it's how you're going to play it back and use it that really counts.
Indeed. Here's a question. Do we have enough talent in ANZ? I think I know the answer to this.
I don't think you'll be surprised. No.
There you go.
Think we do.
I'm not surprised.
I think there's probably a bit of a longer answer. It depends on the specific, I think, area or the specific field, within. So if we look at Salesforce, there certainly is a shortage of good developers, as we all know. There's not necessarily a massive shortage of administrators, for example, right? So I think depending on the different area that you're looking at, there is more shortages in certain areas than others. And I think there is also more, there's more demand for specific skill sets than others. So I don't think it's necessarily just a blanket statement to say, yes, there's a massive shortage, but overall there certainly is. And if you really dig a bit deeper and look at the specific areas, there are shortages, especially on the technical side, and people with really solid technical ability. There are definitely massive shortages. And I think going through, COVID and all the rest of it, again, there are more candidates available. There's more people in the market, but I don't think that will last necessarily very long. I think that's just going to be a short-term thing. So, I think if employers are kind of out there thinking that it's going to be a field day and it's going to be super easy now to hire the best people in the market, I don't necessarily agree with that. But yes, there is a shortage, to answer your question.
Where are you seeing, you mentioned, developers. Are there other pockets? Is there still a demand out there for technical architects and solution architects as well? Is that as strong as a developer, or?
Yeah, I think so. Developers, solution architects, technical architects, I think similar in terms of the demand out there. And I think more so than that, with developers, it's, at least in my experience, clients really want that strong technical capability, but they also want someone with, a decent level of business acumen and a decent level of communication skills. It's not enough just to be an absolute technical gun, but not have any, ability to communicate with clients or with customers to some degree. And I know that that's not necessarily the role of a developer. It's more of a business analyst or maybe a solution architect, but finding that bridge between technical capability and business acumen, as we all know, is very, very rare and very hard. So, and I think that's one of the requirements that keeps coming up, and that's the same for solution architects and technical architects as well. I think from a demand point of view, they're similar. There's not a lot of them out there. Typically, the good ones are employed. They're well looked after generally, and so that obviously goes back to developing the talent pool really, and growing the talent pool in a sustainable way.
That's a good segue to another question we've got. Is what backgrounds and skills have you seen transfer into the Salesforce space really well? So for developers, is it .NET, Java people tend to make good Salesforce developers, or SAP, Oracle consultants? Do their skills migrate pretty well?
Yeah, on the technical side, I think .NET and Java translate very well, and I think some of the best developers that I know and that I've been in contact with for a long time have come from both of those backgrounds initially. It's obviously a fairly smooth transition, right, for developers going from that and then learning Apex and jumping on to Salesforce. I think on the functional side and more on the business side, I've seen a lot of really awesome Siebel people, and I guess it's less so these days, but when I first started out, 2010, 11, there was still a lot of Siebel projects and a lot of Siebel people, but that was really around that time where you could see Salesforce really starting to mature in the market, and you really saw it. I guess you saw the demand coming on. So a lot of people back then really cross-skilled, and I think going from Siebel to Salesforce, again, I guess in a lot of ways Siebel is potentially more kind of complex, the technology side. So I found some really, really awesome people jumping from Siebel to Salesforce from a functional point of view and just picking it up really quickly, and have gone on to have really, really good careers in Salesforce. So yeah, I think anyone looking to make that transition from, if they're currently a Java developer or .NET or anything on the back end, then making that switch is, I think, a really, really good move. What about you, Dan? Like, people who are joining your business, where have you seen, would you say, some really good success in terms of backgrounds?
Yeah, Java skills for devs, definitely. That just seem to pick it up really quick. There's a lot of similarities, and that's born out of the fact that a lot of the core original Salesforce dev frameworks, like Visualforce, were based on Java equivalents because Salesforce itself was built in Java. That's probably changed a little bit now with some of the more modern Lightning Web Components and the like, which probably follow a more modern approach to things. But yeah, certainly backend Apex translates really well from Java and .NET as well. And then a lot of the time, from a consulting point of view, it's kind of like what you were saying before. It just comes back to having really good communication skills, the ability to understand, a certain degree of business speak and technical speak, and be that conduit in the middle. And the technology piece is kind of a byproduct that you pick up over time. And we've seen pure project managers come in, and through doing a couple of Salesforce projects, they understand enough that they're basically a functional consultant. They just kind of learn those skills along the way, and can evolve, if they want to, more fully into that space. So it's one of the things, we've just had a question come in live. How do I cross train as a dev into Salesforce? And if I think about myself in that context, it's just, we take it for granted how easy it is to get started with Salesforce. So at the beginning of 2007, I had crazy aspirations of becoming an SAP consultant, because I just worked as a BA on implementing a different ERP system, and it was kind of average. And so I was like, right, what's the best? I want to, I like the space, but I want to learn the best. But there was just no way as an independent person to have a copy of SAP and learn it. And then a few months later, I discovered Salesforce, and it was just like, oh, you just go here and sign up for a dev org, and you have an entire Enterprise Edition equivalent. And it's like, within a weekend, I had taught myself everything I knew to get started, and just jumped onto it. And so it's that ability to have full, complete access. They're not hiding anything from you. You can go and build the world in a dev org and learn on the job. And then add that in today with Trailhead and the like. And as I said, if you're a dev and you can complete those Apex super badges, then you've pretty much made it from that technical understanding point of view. Then it's about getting your foot in the door to get some practical experience. But yeah, I think it's one of the easier ecosystems to break into because it's so open.
There's actually Trailhead paths. What are we called? Trails? Damn, why couldn't I think of the word trails? For a .NET developer to transition into Salesforce. So having those dedicated trails, they certainly do make that stuff a lot easier.
Yeah.
Again, things we didn't have many years ago. I'm going to stop saying that. Make myself older than I am. Look, I think further to that, another question we've got is, how do I change careers into a Salesforce role? So when we sort of touched on the various things being, Trailhead and the community and all those type of things, is there anything more that you can be doing to transition?
Obviously, Trail's certainly a good way to start. Certifications, from a study point of view. I think, again, joining the community, joining the various groups out there is super important. And I think, like Dan said, the amount of support and resources available in this ecosystem is huge, right? The community is more than willing to offer any support and help and guidance for anyone, really. So I think, connecting with as many people as possible and having those conversations, reaching out to recruiters who know the market and have a general overview, a good bird's eye view of the landscape is super important, and kind of, I guess, getting some advice. It really depends on the area. So, there's people coming in as developers, there's people coming in as admins, or people coming in as consultants or PMs or whatever it might be. So a little bit really depends on the area. I think if we talk about admins, a lot of companies, especially the smaller to medium-sized companies, are quite willing to take on people that don't necessarily have, many years of hands-on experience. If they've got the fundamentals down pat, and which you will get from doing the various modules, doing certifications, again, playing around with the dev org. There's a bunch of different things you can do to really upskill yourself. And I think from there, it's about finding out those Salesforce users and finding out those customers who are looking for a dedicated internal Salesforce admin. And some of the time, the role might not be 100% Salesforce admin role. You might also be doing other things. It might be potentially a sales operations role, for example, or a bit of an inside sales role where you are the dedicated Salesforce champion. From that role, you can then kind of, I guess, develop your skills and further advance yourself within that company, or you can move outside and go elsewhere once you have that practical experience. But I think getting inside a company that uses Salesforce where you can be that dedicated champion or that SME is super important. But again, that might not necessarily be from day one. You might, you need to, I think, you need to be flexible, and I think you need to keep your options open and think of the longer term rather than just the short term kind of goals. So again, depends on the angle that you're coming in, but yeah, that's what I would say.
I think another good thing, we did mention it before, World Tour and Dreamforce, all those events are going to be streamed live. And there's going to be different sessions there that will be applicable to different paths, depending on what you're on, whether you're a customer or you're a system admin or a dev. And all those things end up getting posted to the YouTube channels from Salesforce as well. So there's a heap of content out there from recent events, but also from previous years. Trailhead DX is coming up. I think that's in the next month or something, isn't it? Around about
next month, yeah.
So that'll be all online as well. So that's another place to go. Google's your friend on that stuff, to go and find a plethora of ways to do things out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Shall we finish with one last question, a fun one? Sam, I've spotted you a number of times at Dreamforce. What's in it for a recruiter at Dreamforce?
What's in it for a recruiter? Pretty much all of our clients are over there at the same time from ANZ. Actually, a lot of candidates as well that we know, especially ones that work in large organizations that have the budget to be able to send them, are also over there. So I think it's just a fantastic networking opportunity. You've got 4 or 5 days to really catch up with people that would otherwise take you weeks or potentially months to actually have individual one-on-one catch-ups. You can literally do it in 4 days. Yeah. So from a recruiting point of view, it's an opportunity to further strengthen your relationships and your networks in the ecosystem. And the parties, they're not too bad as well. So it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, I always say you go to Dreamforce so that you can have a chat with someone who might work 500 meters down the road from you in your hometown, but haven't got when people are in normal work mode, they don't have time to meet with you, but you both fly halfway around the world, and that's where this networking opportunity gives you the chance to have conversations with some CIOs of big organizations and this kind of thing that you don't normally get the chance. And I certainly find for us as Kiwis and the wider APAC communities, they tend to stick together at Dreamforce as well. And so the fact that you've all traveled so far to get there, there's a really great community, and the traditional Monday night APAC party is always a good one. And you kind of build these connections that you might meet some people and see them the next time you see them is at Dreamforce the following year, and you strike up that conversation and just carry on. And so that's one of the real benefits that I've seen.
Yeah,
we'll have to spin up some virtual parties this year.
Yeah,
get onto it.
Just a suggestion. That's all.
excellent. So thank you, Sam, for your time today. Really appreciated having you on the stream today, and it's the most live questions we've had. So it must be something of the great audience that you've attracted today.
Thanks for having me.
All good. So we'll just close out with our usual little promo for a new program that we're offering, SFDC Academy. And so the way I described this to a prospect yesterday, and it seemed to resonate, was we help you get unstuck. So for Salesforce admins, maybe you're a solo admin working in an organization, you just want someone to bounce off, get your solutions validated and ensure you're going down the right path. That's where we're here within our coach program to help you get past any areas you get stuck and help you validate that you're going down the right path. So you get the benefit of all of our knowledge in the wider Trinio team as your personal CRM coach. And with that, we will finish up for today. But thank you everyone for coming along. And again, thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much. Cheers.